morning where I'm at, good afternoon, good evening, or as Truman would say, let me remember how Truman said it, good morning, and then he'd say, and if I don't see you again, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. If you've ever watched the Truman Show, you'll know that scene. Ephesians is where we're at today, in the book of Ephesians, and we are discussing the topic of why do I need the church. It's quite a good topic at any time to discuss and study, but it is especially applicable right now for the last 4 months, at least where we are. As a large rule, or as a general rule, many of our church bodies have not met together in the numbers that they would have prior to the outbreak of COVID-19 in the U.S. We are meeting, we are doing virtual things, we have people attending, we are sending out emails, we're doing a lot of things, but we're not meeting together, we are not physically present in the same place. And as we've experienced that, the reality has come to us as leaders of the church is how does the church minister to people who don't necessarily meet at the same place at least once a week. So that's been a challenge for us. But I'm sure on the other hand, for some of you all, it's been a challenge of identifying why do you even need the church? I mean, your life is going on. Many of you have still been working. Your families are still growing. Time has not stopped for anyone. And so the question of why do I need the church is really applicable. You guys, you students that have been in your homes primarily for the last 3 or 4 months, who haven't been attending our youth group meetings because we haven't been having them except virtually, but you're still welcome to attend every Wednesday at 7:15. But you haven't been attending meetings, you haven't been doing a lot of these things, and you are at such a crucial point in your life that I hope that through this you're going to come to understand the need for a church and the need for a gathering of a group of people who believe in Jesus. And so today we're going to begin to answer this question of why do I need the church? And we're going to look at how we become a part of the body of Christ. As individuals, we begin to make up the representation of who Jesus is. And this is very important. And let me steer off subject here before we get kicked off on our study, which was written by Chris James, who is a pastor in Lowell, Massachusetts. And as we kick this off, I want to just give you a quick challenge here. A lot of times in your life, especially students, if you mention you attend church or maybe you mention that you believe in God, you're going to hear people say things like, well, the church has done some awful things in the past. Look at the church's past. You're going to hear things like maybe the Spanish Inquisition. You're going to hear how the church in Germany essentially embraced Hitler and his Nazi regime that ultimately led to the deaths of millions and millions of Jews, and so many other people were lost in the war that came about from that mindset and that political agenda. You're going to hear people say things like, well, look at the Crusades and how destructive those were and how we're still reaping the outflowing of that in our relationship with the Western world and the Middle East. And you know, people usually want to say that because they think they've got you. They'll say something like, how can you be part of an organization that is so awful and has done so many awful things? And the response that I've come up with is simply this: well, that's why I'm part of it, because I want to be a part of the change of it. I don't want to be a part of another Inquisition. I don't want to be a part of another Holy Crusade. I don't want to be any part of this, because that's not what God's called us to. And so I just encourage you, if you hear that, especially younger students, you're going to hear it in high school and college. I've heard of more than one professor who thinks that that is a got you moment to present to people who come into their classroom with a faith and trust in who God is. And so one of your responses can easily be, well, that's why I'm part of it. I don't want to repeat it. I don't want to be a part of the repeating of that. So we're going to kick it off in Ephesians chapter 1, and we're going to look at verses 20 through 23, which begin to give us this picture of how Paul and the other writers in the New Testament, and even Jesus himself, presented the church. Speaking of Jesus, or God, he exercised this power in Christ, in verse 20, by raising him from the dead and seating him at his right hand in the heavens, far above every ruler and authority, power and dominion, and every title given, not only in this age, but in the age to come. And he subjected everything under his feet, and appointed him as head over everything for the church, which is his body, the fullness of the one who fills all things in every way. One of the questions that's posed to us in this study is this: how is being a part of a church different from being a part of any other organization? Now, that's not an easy question to answer on the surface, because many times the church begins to, especially as it matures, as it gets caught in its traditions, as it begins to take focus outside of particularly maybe following Jesus in that moment, but looks to the past and looks to the future and tries to shape itself as an organization. Many times being a part of a church will look like a lot of other organizations. It will look like you are based on your ability to be a part of this organization is based on your performance. It will look like you need to do particular things to join this organization. And so your students need to think about that and be reminded as you begin your life of being a part of the church, and especially as you potentially move and go to school or do things and become a part of different church organizations, that you understand that being a part of a church is not like joining any other club. It's not about your performance, but it's rather about the focal point of the church, and who in this case, this organization, is Jesus. And so we see that as Paul writes this passage, the first thing he wants his readers to understand is this, is that Jesus is above everything. This would have been very difficult for them to understand in the culture in which they lived. If they were a Roman, and many of them were, or if they were under Roman rule, and almost all of them were, they were required to declare that Caesar was the Son of God, that he was a descendant of the gods, and that he had all power and all authority. And so the first thing Paul does is he runs counter to that. And he says the first thing you need to understand is that Jesus is above every ruler and authority, power, and dominion. Now, it's easy for us to look back and say, well, that's ridiculous. Why would they ever believe that Caesar was the Son of God? Well, let me ask you something, and we may look at this next week. I accidentally skipped the politics lesson by looking ahead and trying to figure out the next theme. And so we may go back and teach that lesson next week and then finish out this group of lessons. But as we look at this, it's very easy to see how we begin to think that what we're doing in the culture that we're living in is supreme, that our ideas are the best and our way is the best. And we need to understand this: Jesus he's not sitting in heaven waiting to come back and rule. He literally is in charge even now at this moment. He is a ruler over everything that is on the earth, okay? And so we look at this, and Paul pictures it. He says Jesus is the head. And the idea was that everywhere your head goes, the body goes. And everything that the head tells the body to do, the body does. If you've ever played sports, you may have learned some things like you can't go anywhere without his head. He might fake you. You can't go anywhere without his middle or his feet or those sorts of things. You may have learned different tips on defending someone or trying to figure out where they were going next. And so Paul is giving us that same picture by saying Jesus is the head of the church, and we are his body. We complete him. And that's such a mind-boggling thought. When you go and read the Gospels and you read about what Jesus did and what he taught and his emphasis and his focus and his attention that he paid to people, and then you realize that he says that we are the completeness of him, that we as his church are to be his completeness, it is a staggering thought. And it's so interesting here, and I want to take in just a little quick moment and try to help you guys understand, and I'm going to deal with some bad theology here for just a minute. It's rooted in a good attempt, but it's bad theology. I'm going to show you a picture here. Y'all know I can't draw. It's a little top there of an umbrella. Okay, maybe you can see that. Looks like an umbrella. A lot of times you will see people say things like, Jesus is the umbrella. And then under Jesus, there's another umbrella. And under that, there's another umbrella. And ultimately under that is you. And they'll say things like a pastor, a father, those sorts of things, that they're those other umbrellas. Let me help you out. No. Either Jesus is the head or somebody else is the head. And if you're part of any organization or any group where somebody else is the head and not Jesus, no. There are too many people who have attempted to interpret who Jesus is and define themselves as the only arbitrator of what that means and try to dictate how other people live. By the way, that's how all of those things that I mentioned at the beginning came to pass. The Inquisition, the Holy Wars, all of those things came to pass by individuals taking the role and the position that belonged to Jesus. And by the way, if you haven't forgotten, that's where Satan originally started as well, by trying to take the role and the position that belonged to Jesus. So anytime somebody shows you something like that, I mean, God has put your parents over you, but they are not between you and Jesus. Your relationship is directly with Jesus. Okay? As Baptists, one of the beliefs that we have is the priesthood of the believer, the individual priesthood of the believer. And what that means is I can go directly to God because of Jesus. I can have direct communication with God. There is no need for a pastor. There's no need for a parent. There is no need for a priest or anyone else to stand in between me and God and plead for me. I can do it directly. Now, we're thankful for all of those who stand alongside of us and plead for us, but you as an individual can go directly to God. And God, the other side of that is Jesus has gifted us individually with His Spirit. And so individually with the work of the Holy Spirit in our lives, we're able to live lives that honor Him and work out that fullness. So we're going to move ahead to Ephesians chapter 2. And the first thing we see about this is that Jesus is the head of the church. And then we're going to look at verses 8 through 10, which if you've grown up in a church, you're probably fairly familiar with. It says this, "For you are saved by grace through faith, and this is not from yourself. It is God's gift, not from works, so that no one can boast. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus, for good works, which God prepared ahead of time for us to do." The reality of this is, as we walk into this and we understand what it means to be a part of the church, is Paul's challenge to the believers that they understand that since they came through faith, that since their lives were transformed because of their trust in who Jesus was, that their lives could only be lived out the same way, by faith. And that is it's a difficult thing to, it's a good theory. It's a difficult reality to live in. Many times I can tell you, as a parent and as a student pastor and even as being a pastor and different things, I have not wanted people to live in faith. I have wanted them to live by my instructions. I have not wanted people to trust God. I've wanted them to trust me because I knew particular ideals and systems and knew that if they did certain things, they would probably end up with certain results. But God has not called us to live that kind of life. He's called us to live a life of faith. And in fact, this past week in my study on James, we looked at that and we looked at the challenges of what it means to walk away from things that we think we've earned and things that we think we've bought simply because we're called to live a life of faith. So the reality of it is this, that we as members of the church, as members of the body of Christ, we are identified by our position and not our performance. Now, I want you to think about that. We talked about other clubs and how they work and what it means to be a part of another club and how you have to pay dues. And we didn't mention that, but I'm mentioning it now. How you have to pay dues and how you have to do certain things and have to donate certain hours and do all these sorts of things. And if you're in a club at school or maybe you're an adult and you're in a club, you understand that process. But as believers, we're completely different. We're identified by our position and not by our performance. And this is so hard, and I can tell you as someone who's been involved in a traditional church now for 20 plus years, and over 15 of those years being involved on church staff and leadership positions, that it is very easy to put our emphasis on performance. Whether or not somebody teaches VBS, whether or not they help out in the choir, whether or not they help out in the nursery, and those sorts of things. And as a functioning meeting group, you have to have those needs met in order for you to continue to meet in the way that we do. But that does not define our spirituality. Performance does not identify who we are in the position, because we're saved by grace through faith. And because of that, everything we do now is supposed to be built upon faith. So we've seen that Jesus is the head of the church. The second thing that we see is that the currency of the church is faith. That's very hard for us to grasp, because if you are like I am and you grew up in a church and you're growing up in a church, we think a lot of times that our currency is morality. We think a lot of times that our currency is good things, or making moral, theistic decisions. In other words, making good moral choices based on this idea that there is a supreme being somewhere who is interested in your behavior. But the currency of the church is faith. And it's to live a life of faith. And it's to take the words of Scripture and try to interpret them through faith and understand them through faith, instead of nailing them down in ABC things, which, by the way, you need ABC things. You can't live in faith if you don't have a basic understanding. Let me help you out here. If you're going to jump off of a cliff into a body of water underneath you, that may require faith. It certainly does. It also requires sometimes a little bit of foolishness. But that faith is probably built on a few realities. Number one, the water's deep enough for you to jump in. Maybe you've seen other people do it. Maybe somebody's told you how deep it is. Maybe you actually went down there and did the smart thing and checked it out for yourself. Okay, it's also built upon your ability to leap. You've understood what jumping is before, and you don't run to the edge of the cliff and then just fall off and bounce off every rock on the way down. Okay, so we are called to live in faith, but that faith is based on certain realities that we've accepted. And one of those realities is the fact that Jesus is the head of the church. But never miss this reality that faith is the currency of the church. Okay, it is what we are called to act in. So now let's look up the makeup of this body, and we'll spend just a few minutes here as we wrap this up. Ephesians chapter 2, 19 through 22 says this: So then you are no longer foreigners and strangers, but fellow citizens with the saints, and members of God's household, built on the foundation of the apostles and prophets, with Christ Jesus himself as the cornerstone. In him the whole building, being put together, grows into a holy temple in the Lord. In him you are also being built together for God's dwelling in the Spirit. Let me give you a couple of words out of this passage. Foreigners and strangers, fellow citizens, saints, and members, apostles and prophets. Every single one of these words is describing or attempting to describe a different group, a different class, a different ethnicity, a different type of people. Foreigners, those outside of the body, those outside of the Jewish religion. Strangers, those who had no clue what was happening with who Jesus was and who God was, and no idea of God's promises that he had been giving to the Israelite nation for thousands of years. Fellow citizens, joined together. We have a common identity. A common identity. Saints, the people who have pursued a relationship with God, the people who have had a relationship with God and have lived a life of separation. And then you get into members. That's just everybody that's there, everybody that's a part of this thing. Then you get into the apostles and the prophets. The apostles saw Jesus. They lived with Jesus. They directly were taught by him. The prophets were these people who lived hundreds and potentially even thousands of years before, who heard through God's Spirit and spoke words of prophecy to the nation of Israel, for reminding them of their need to focus on God's two major laws. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. As you read the prophets, those are the two themes that really come out clearly. But here's the thing, and this is something that you and I need to be very careful of. And students, you need, if I can say anything to you, this is it. Especially as you potentially move away. Church needs variety. Let me say it again. We need variety. One of the dangers that I found in myself when I began to step into leadership roles in the church was that my assumption was that the church would be a better place if everybody thought, acted, and behaved like I did. In other words, I thought if everybody believes this way, then we'll be okay. If everybody shows up at this time, we'll be okay. If everybody does this one thing, we will be okay. Number one, that's foolish and is prideful, okay? But number two, I look back on the 20 plus years, and specifically I look at the 13 years now that we have been privileged to be at Second Baptist, and look at the variety of people that God has led in our past and that we have worked alongside of. And I look now at where their lives are and where their ministry is and what they're doing in their lives. And I say to myself, thank you, Lord, that they did not act like me. Thank you, Lord, that they did not conform to my ways. Thank you that they didn't try to look and behave just like me. We need variety. Is one of the great needs of the church is variety. And it is a need that we must propagate within ourselves by recognizing how often we eliminate people from even considering that they're part of the church, that they're part of being followers of Christ, simply because they don't look like us, act like us, talk like us, or believe like us in the ways that we think are absolutely vital. And let's look at why that's important. Verse 21. In him, the entire building, being put together, grows into a holy temple in the Lord. Now, that's what's happening with the church as a whole. Here in the finale is why you and I need the church specifically and individually. In him you are also being built together for God's dwelling in the Spirit. The reality of it is this: if you join with people who believe that Jesus is the head of the church, that he is over all things, if you join with people who believe that faith is the currency by which we are to live our lives, and it is how we are to live, you join with them, then here's what's going to happen. Your life is going to be changed. You are going to be shaped. You are going to be molded. You are going to be changed. And like I said, looking at those past 13 years that we have been privileged to be at this church in 2 different time segments, the reality of it is this: not only have we seen other people's lives change, but truthfully our lives are being changed as well. And that is one of the major reasons that you and I need the church, that we can be built together for God's dwelling in the Spirit. Thank you. God bless.